Good day. Uh, Welcome again to the Basic Philippine Law and Jurisprudence channel. We are now on the series of lectures on property and land laws. Our topic for today are the modes of acquiring ownership. Article 712, the Civil Code, tells us of one of the modes of acquisition of ownership. It's actually an original mode of acquisition of ownership through occupation and intellectual creation. Okay? Ownership is acquired by occupation and by intellectual creation. Ownership and other real rights over property are acquired and transmitted by law, by donation, by testate and intestate succession, and in consequence of certain contracts by tradition. Okay, there are different modes of acquisition of ownership. Okay. Now, one of the original modes, two of the original modes of acquisition of ownership is through occupation as well as intellectual creation. Okay. There are also derivative modes of acquiring ownership, meaning they are not original. You're not the first owner. You just derive your ownership from another person. Okay, those based on pre-existing right held by another person. Example of which are law, okay, if it is provided by law or statutes, okay, giving you ownership provided that certain conditions are met, okay, um, donation, okay, if a person donates his property to another, that is also one of the derivative modes of acquiring ownership. Succession by will or through intestate succession, okay, by which death provided the means of transfer of ownership. So it is also a derivative mode of acquisition of ownership. Tradition, this is based on contract or agreement between the parties such as sale, okay, and prescription. Okay, meaning possession in the concept of owner would vest the property to a person provided that all the requirements for acquisitive prescription are met. Okay. Now, what are the examples of acquisition of ownership by law and tradition? Okay. These are the examples of acquisition of ownership by law, meaning if you meet all the requirements in the statute or in the law, then you acquire ownership of that thing. Example, hidden treasure belongs to the owner of the land where it is found. So it is the law which gave ownership to the owner of the land with respect to the hidden treasure. Okay, number two, the owner of the land is the owner of the buildings, plantings, and sowings. Although this is only a presumption, okay, meaning if there is a building or plants or sowings which stood on the land, the owner of the land is presumed to be the owner. That presumption is subject to rebuttal, meaning it can be overturned by evidence to the contrary. But the owner of the land, there is a presumption that the owner of the land is the owner of the buildings, plantings, and so. Abandoned riverbeds belong to the owners of the land occupied by the new course. So if a river change its course, okay, the abandoned riverbed will now be owned by the owner of the lands which were occupied by the new course of the river, meaning their land became the new riverbed. So the ownership is vested by law. Okay? Union of two movable things without bad faith belong to the owner of the principal. Okay? And fruits falling on the adjacent land belong to the owner of the adjacent land, provided that the falling thereof is natural. Okay, so these are examples of acquisition of ownership by law. It is the law which provided for ownership, provided that all the conditions in the law are met. Now, what are the examples of acquisition of ownership by tradition? Delivery constitutes the indispensable requisite for the purpose of acquiring ownership by virtue of a contract. When there is delivery, the fact that the property has not been paid in full is not an obstacle to acquisition of ownership without prejudice to the right of the vendor to claim the remaining balance. Because in sale, it is the delivery thereof which effectively transfers ownership to the buyer. Okay. Real tradition, when we speak of real tradition, we speak of physical delivery. Constructive tradition, delivery is not real but consists of certain facts indicative of the same. So an example of constructive tradition is symbolical tradition. It is done through the delivery of signs or things. Example, when you buy, for example, a car, and the car is not delivered, but the key to the car, symbolizing the car, was delivered. So that is symbolical tradition. Tradition by public instrument, public writing with delivery of documents evidencing the transaction. So the execution, for example, of a deed of sale, okay, is equivalent to constructive delivery. Tradition longa manu, pointing out to the grantee of the thing to be delivered. So, um, and tradition brevi manu, the grantee is already in possession of the thing under another title. So if, for example, you bought the house and lot that you are leasing or that you are renting, then you know that would be tradition brevi manu. So you're not no longer the lessee but the owner. And tradition constitutum possessorium, the owner alienates the thing but remains in possession in another concept. Okay, so if, for example, if you are the owner of the thing, owner of a house and lot, but you sold it to another person and that person leased it to you, okay, so that is the reverse of brevi. Okay, so you are still in possession of the thing, but in another concept, the concept of a lessee, okay, not in the concept of an owner. Okay, so let us now go to the first mode of original acquisition of ownership through occupation. So what is occupation and what are the things that are capable of being occupied? Things appropriable by nature which are without an owner, such as animals that are the object of hunting and fishing, hidden treasure and abandoned movables are acquired by occupation. Remember, this is an original mode of acquisition of ownership. What do you mean by occupation? It is the seizure of things corporeal which have no owner with the intention of acquiring ownership thereof. Remember that in occupation, the thing or the property must be corporeal, meaning capable of being seized, capable of being um, sensed, capable of being touched. Okay, and it is also necessary that the thing which is seized has no owner. Okay, because if it has an owner, then it cannot be um, owned through occupation. Okay. Now, what are the requirements for acquisition of ownership by occupation? Okay, the act which constitutes occupation is seizure. So there must be a seizure of a thing. It is sufficient that there is an act of taking, possession, material holding is not required, provided that the thing is subject to his control or disposition. Okay, so there must be a seizure or material holding of the thing or subjecting the thing to one's own control. Okay? Second, the thing must be corporeal personal property without any known owner or abandoned by the owner. So it must be personal property which is corporeal and it must have no owner or no known owner or abandoned by the owner. If it has a known owner, then it cannot be seized by occupation. Okay, third, the thing must be susceptible of appropriation by nature. It is capable of appropriation. Fourth, the thing must be without an owner. Fifth, there must be an intention to appropriate. And sixth, the requisites laid down by law must be complied with. Okay, now what are the ways of acquiring ownership through occupation? Okay, first is hunting and fishing. The fish and the wild animals do not have an owner. Okay, they are corporeal personal property. Okay, therefore, without an owner, and therefore, they can be seized through occupation. Finding movables which never had any owner. Okay, finding movables abandoned by the owner and finding hidden treasure. Okay, these are the ways of acquiring ownership by occupation. How about lands? Can land be owned through occupation? The answer is no. Article 714 explicitly states that the ownership of a piece of land cannot be acquired by occupation. Occupation as a mode of acquiring ownership does not apply to lands. There can be no land without an owner by reason of the regalian doctrine. All lands that are not of private ownership belongs to the state. Okay, remember there can be no land without an owner. If the ownership of the land is not known, automatically the regalian doctrine will apply and the state will be the owner of the land. So the requisite for occupation that the property must have no owner will not be satisfied with respect to land. So land cannot be acquired through occupation. Okay, the right to hunt and fish is regulated by special laws. Okay, let us now go to occupation of animals. Okay, with respect to bees, when can you say if a swarm of bees goes to your property, are you and goes to the beehive, for example, are you automatically the owner of the swarm of bees? The owner of a swarm of bees shall have a right to pursue them to another's land, indemnifying the possessor of the latter for the damage. If the owner has not pursued the swarm or ceases to do so within 2 consecutive days, the possessor of the land may occupy or retain the same. Okay? So remember that a swarm of bees are considered as wild animals. Okay? They are not domesticated in the sense that they do not have the capability to return to its owner. Okay, that is the reason why when a swarm of bees invades or goes into another's property, the owner of that swarm of bees has to follow them and claim them within 2 consecutive days. Otherwise, okay, if they stay in the beehive located in another's property, they become part of that immovable. They become part of that house. Okay, and the owner of that property where the swarm of bees flew will become the owner of the swarm. Okay. How about domesticated animals? So the owner of domesticated animals may also claim them within 20 days to be counted from their occupation by another person. This period having expired, they shall pertain to him who has caught and kept them. So domesticated animals like cats and dogs, okay, those who have the habit of returning to their owner, okay, you have to claim them within 20 days from their occupation by another person. If you don't claim them, then it can be owned through occupation by the finder of the domesticated animal. Okay, Article 717. How about pigeons and fish? Pigeons and fish which from their respective breeding places pass to another pertaining to a different owner shall belong to the latter, provided they have not been enticed by some artifice or fraud. Remember when we were talking about the classification of property into immovables and movables. Di ba, with respect to pigeon houses, okay, we are saying that the pigeon house as well as the animals therein, okay, are considered as immovable. Okay? They become part of the immovable. So, if the pigeons and fish goes to another property, okay, and live there, okay, they become part of that immovable. Okay, unless of course they were enticed by some artifice or fraud, in which case the owner of the property to which the pigeons flew or to which the fish swam, okay, will now be liable for theft. Okay, if they were enticed or there were some artifice or fraud that was employed. Okay, now now with respect to hidden treasure, okay, the rules: he who by chance discovers hidden treasure in another's property shall have the right granted him in Article 48 of the Code. So, meaning if the hidden treasure is found in his property, then he shall be the sole owner thereof. However, if it is found by another person who has the right to be in the said property, they shall share, okay, equally the hidden treasure. Okay, whoever finds a movable which is not treasure must return it to its previous possessor. If the latter is unknown, the finder shall deposit it with the mayor of the city or the municipality where the finding has taken place. The finding shall be publicly announced by the mayor for 2 consecutive weeks in the way he deems best. If the movable cannot be kept without deterioration or without the expenses, which considerably diminish its value, it shall be sold at public auction 8 days after the publication. So 6 months from the publication having elapsed, without the owner having appeared, the thing found or its value shall be awarded to the finder. The finder and the owner shall be obliged to reimburse the expenses. Now, question: what if the hidden treasure has an ID, for example? Meaning, there is evidence as to ownership. In that case, that can no longer be acquired through occupation because okay, you cannot satisfy the requirement that there is no known owner. Okay, the fact that the owner has left an ID, okay, means that he is not abandoning it and he wants it to be returned whoever finds the same. Okay, now, what if there are movables? Let us say, for example, a wallet. Okay, a wallet where there is an ID contained in the wallet, or even if there is no ID contained in the wallet, you found it lying in the street. Let us say it has 10,000 pesos inside the wallet. So does it mean that if you are the finder, you may consider it as a treasure and therefore you're entitled to keep it? The answer is no. Okay, why? Because of Article 719. If you are the finder of a movable, which is not treasure, okay, you must return it to its previous possessor if known. However, if it is unknown, there is still an obligation to return it. To whom shall you return it? You return it to the mayor of the city or to the municipality where it was found. And then the mayor will publish it. Now, if there is no claimant within a period of 6 months, that is the time when you can claim ownership of the movable that you found. Okay? Now, if the owner should appear in time, he shall be obliged to pay as a reward to the finder 1/10 of the sum or of the price of the thing found. So with respect to the 10,000 pesos, the finder is entitled to a reward of 1,000 pesos. Okay? That is if the true owner comes out and claims it. Okay. People versus Abina. Okay, this is quite an old case, but it is still applicable. Okay, so in this case, Pilares and his family took a carretela to go home. Now they were transferring their belongings to another house. So they were carrying a lot of things, including a purse containing money as well as jewelry worth 4,500, which is at that time cost a lot. Now, upon arriving at the house, the family alighted, but the wife of Pilares inadvertently failed to carry with her the purse, and she left it in the carretela. Now, the driver, Tiburcio, saw the purse which was left in the carretela, and he picked it up. Now, Tiburcio handed the purse to Avila, who is a policeman, and asked him to deliver it to Pilares because he knew who the owner of the purse is. Okay, now within a very few hours after the incident, uh, a complaint was made to the police authorities and the cochero Tiburcio was arrested because Avila did not return the purse to the wife of Pilares. Okay. The most fundamental notion in the crime of theft is taking of the thing to be appropriated into the physical power of the thief, which idea is qualified by other conditions such that the taking must be affected with animo lucrandi and without the consent of the owner. And it will be noted that the definition does not require that the taking should be effected against the will of the owner, but merely that it should be without consent. So in this case, the gist of the offense is the furtive taking and misappropriation. So the furtive, under the conditions stated, the accused, if not the actual finder, occupied towards the purse, took it into his hands, precisely the same relation as if he had picked it up himself. The purpose of the law is to protect the owner of the lost thing from appropriation by the person into whose hands it may come, with knowledge of its ownership. The accused was a finder in law, if not in fact, and his act in appropriating the property was precisely the same character as it had been originally found by him. So the accused committed the offense of theft when he appropriated the purse belonging to Pilares under the conditions already stated. And in the circumstance that he received the purse by delivery from Tiburcio, who was the actual finder, is immaterial. Okay? So with respect to movables, if you find a movable and you know who is the owner of that movable, there is that duty to return it to the office of the mayor. Okay? The rule on finders keepers will only apply or acquisition of ownership by occupation if there is no claimant for a period of 6 months. Okay. Tan versus Urdaneta. So in this case, there is a court employee, okay, who usually keeps her jewelry inside the locked drawer of her table in the office of the Hall of Justice. However, she discovered that her ring and bracelet worth 15,000 were missing. Okay. And then she believes that the only person who saw her take out the jewelry was the respondent whose table is adjacent to her table. So the utility Urdaneta, the one who occupied the position of utility and whose table is adjacent to her, he believed that he is the person who took the jewelry. When a person who finds a thing that has been lost or mislaid by the owner takes the thing into his hands, he acquires physical custody only and does not become vested with legal possession. In assuming such custody, the finder is charged with the obligation of restoring the thing to its owner. It is thus the duty of the respondent to report to his superior or his office mates that he found something. So the Civil Code explicitly requires the finder of a lost property to report it to the authority. Contrary to the respondent's claim, this court is convinced that the respondent had the intention to appropriate the jewelry to himself had this not been discovered by his wife. His claim that the ring and bracelet were worthless fancy jewelry is immaterial because the basis for his liability is his act of taking something which does not belong to him. Okay, so remember that when you find a movable, okay, who the owner of which is known to you or is unknown to you, there is that duty to return it either to the owner if it is known or to the proper authorities if it is not known. Failure to do so will make you liable for the crime of theft. Okay? We now go to intellectual creation. So Article 721 defines what consists of works through intellectual creation, which is another original mode of acquisition of ownership. By intellectual creation, the following persons acquire ownership. The author, with regard to his literary, dramatic, historical, legal, philosophical, scientific, or other works, the composer as to his musical composition, the painter, sculptor, or other artist with respect to the product of his art, the scientist or technologist, or any other person with regard to his discovery or invention. What is intellectual creation? It is an original mode of acquiring ownership where the creations or product of one's mind, such as writings, musical compositions, artistic creations, discoveries, and inventions, become his exclusive property, giving him the right to authorize or refuse publication or production of such creations or products. Intellectual property refers to the totality of all the rights which the law recognizes in favor of the author, composer, painter, artist, scientist, or any other person with respect to the creations or products of his intellect. So the distinctive types of intellectual property are copyrights, patents, designs, and trademarks. So it gives protection to the one who created or produced the work or the composition. Okay, it gives him the exclusive authority to reproduce the said work or composition. Ownership of intellectual creation. The author and the composer shall have the ownership of their creations even before the public views the same. Once their works are published, their rights are governed by the appropriate laws. So the painter, sculptor, or other artist shall have dominion over the product of his art even before it is copyrighted. The scientist or technologist has the ownership of his discovery or invention even before it is patented. So remember, the mere fact that you were able to produce either the discovery or the work of art gives you ownership of the same through intellectual creation. But in order for that ownership of that product of intellectual creation to be protected and for you to have exclusive rights over that intellectual creation, you have to seek the protection of the law. How do you seek protection of the law? By having it copyrighted or patented. Okay, that is the protection of the law. Intellectual creation gives you ownership because it is your work after all. It is an original mode of acquisition of ownership, but it does not give you protection. For it to be protected, you have to have it either copyrighted or patented. Okay? No one can publish his work without his consent. The right of ownership may be enforced by an action for damages. If it is copyrighted or patented. Okay? Copyrights and patents. Special laws govern copyrights and patents. Copyright, what is copyright? It is the right of ownership given to creators or authors of literary, scholarly, scientific, artistic works, including the prohibition or the prevention of reproduction, publication, translation, distribution, and other communication to the public of the works. In other words, you have the exclusive rights over the subject of the copyright. Okay, patent is the right given to an inventor of a product, process, or an improvement to restrain, prohibit, or prevent any unauthorized person or entity from making, using, selling, or dealing in that product, or from using the process and from manufacturing, selling, or dealing in any product obtained directly or indirectly from such process. Remember, when we speak of copyright, we speak of works of art, literary, scholarly, scientific. Okay, when we speak of patent, it means that it is a scientific discovery or invention. So it can be a product, it can be a process or an improvement. Okay, scientific. Okay. What are the special laws on copyright and patent? We have RA 8293 as amended by RA 10372, the Intellectual Property Code, RA number 166, the Trademark Law, Articles 188 and 189 of the Revised Penal Code, PD 285, the Decree on Compulsory Reprinting of Foreign Textbooks, and PD 49, the Decree on Protection of Intellectual Property. We will not be able to discuss in detail copyrights, patents, and intellectual properties because it will take a whole semester. This is a special subject. It can become one of your electives. Okay. How about letters? Who is the owner of letters? Letters and other private communications in writing are owned by the person to whom they are addressed and delivered, but they cannot be disseminated without the consent of the writer or his heirs. However, the writer may authorize their publication or dissemination if the public good or the interest. The court may authorize their publication or dissemination. The public good or interest requires. Okay, we have to, in determining the ownership of letters, we have to distinguish between the physical letter and the contents of the letter. With respect to the contents of the letter is owned by the writer, while the physical letter, the one that you hold in your hands, is owned by the receiver of the letter. Okay? So, in order to, for the public, for the contents of the letter to be disseminated to the public, you have to get the consent of the letter writer or the letter sender. Okay. The contents of the letter cannot be published without the consent of the sender or her heirs. However, the physical letter is owned by the recipient. He may do whatever he wants on the physical letter. He may throw it away, he may burn it, or he may keep it. Okay? But he cannot have it reproduced and he cannot have it published without the consent of the sender of the letter. Okay, Republic versus Tupas. It is a relatively recent case decided only on September 2020. Okay, this concerns the procurement of PNP uniforms containing the new logo of the PNP. Okay, in this case, the PNP Director for Logistics Support Service authorized the procurement of new uniforms and equipment for the PNP, including the brand new badges. Okay, now Tupas, okay, was the one who created the new designs of the PNP cap device and badge. Now Tupas volunteered and rendered these services for free. Tupas will sketch the new designs and produce samples or prototypes for approval by the PNP board. Okay, so PNP conducted a bidding for the procurement of the new PNP CAP devices and badges. Now, El Oro submitted the second highest bid price. Okay, it is not, diba, in bidding, it is awarded to the lowest bidder. El Oro, okay, which is the company in which Tupas was connected in, submitted the second highest. However, the contract was not awarded to the winning bidder but to El Oro. Okay. Now, the Republic wanted to cancel Tupas certificates of copyright registration. Okay. They claim that Tupas developed the original designs on which the present designs of the device were based. However, Hens and Oro owned the copyright over the designs and was allegedly the only qualified bidder. In other words, El Oro was saying that there is no one qualified to comply with the contract because Tupas was the one who created the design and therefore he was the one who only has the authority to produce the said design. Now, the issue is whether or not PNP as contributor of ideas should be deemed as the author of the new designs. Because in making the design, PNP contributed to the badge, to the design of the badge. Okay. So, is Tupas the copyright owner or does PNP have the right to the said new design? Copyright is purely statutory right. Only classes of works falling under the statutory enumeration are entitled to protection. Copyright grants legal protection by prohibiting the unauthorized reproduction of the author's works. It creates a temporary monopoly on varying types of knowledge, allowing their owners to restrict and even prevent others from using that knowledge. By eliminating fear of others' appropriation and exploitation of an author's work, intellectual creation is incentivized because this is the only way by which we can compensate, okay, the persons who created or produced the literary artistic work for which copyright was granted. The Court of Appeals correctly classified the new designs of the PNP and badge as derivative works. The test whether the new designs are copyrightable independently from the pre-existing works is the presence of originality in the derivative work. The new work, although similar to the pre-existing work in some of its expressive elements, must be substantially distinct from the pre-existing work. Copyright protection shall extend to expressions and not to ideas, procedures, methods of operation, or mathematical concepts. The principle in copyright protection is that ideas are not protectable and only expressions of those ideas may be subject to copyright protection. So even if the PNP has contributed, okay, their ideas to the making of the design, okay, ideas cannot be the subject of copyright protection. To create a thing that may be entitled to a copyright requires something more than the giving of ideas and concepts. Ideas should translate to or transition into something that is tangible or physical. In other words, something capable of being perceived must be produced. An image that remains in a person's mind would not be entitled to copyright protection unless he draws it on a piece of paper or paints the image on the canvas. Petitioner and Tupas collaborated to develop the new designs of the PNP CAP device and badge. However, the extent of petitioner's participation in developing the new designs of the PNP CAP was limited to instructing Tupas on how the design should appear in general and what specific elements should be incorporated. Petitioner merely supplied ideas and concepts. Petitioner cannot be considered as an author of the new designs either in whole or in parts. So the copyright ownership belonged to Tupas. Okay. Another case, let's move to the case of Ching versus Salinas. So in this case, Ching is the owner and general manager of Jesse Chris Manufacturing, the maker and manufacturer of a utility model described as leaf spring eye bushing for automobile, made up of plastic. They were issued by the National Library certificates of copyright registration and deposit of the said work. So Ching requested the NBI for apprehension and prosecution of illegal manufacturers and distributors of the work. So NBI applied for search warrants, which were granted. So the respondents, on the other hand, averred that the works covered by the certificates issued by the National Library are not artistic. They are considered as automotive spare parts and pertain to technology. They aver that the models are not original and as such are not the proper subject of a patent nor copyright. It bears stressing that the focus of copyright is the usefulness of the artistic design and not its marketability. The central inquiry is whether the article is the work of art. Remember, the extension granted by copyright is with respect to works of art, not those which are scientific, consisting of a product process. Okay? Works for applied art include all original pictorials, graphics, and sculptural works that are intended to or have been embodied in useful article, regardless of the factors such as mass production, commercial exploitation, etc. These articles are useful articles which are defined as one having an intrinsic utilitarian function that is not merely to portray the appearance of the article or to convey information. While works of applied art, original intellectual, literary, and artistic works are copyrightable, useful articles and works of industrial design are not. A useful article may be copyrightable only and only to the extent that such design incorporates pictorial, graphic, or sculptural features that can be identified separately from and are capable of existing independently of the utilitarian aspects of the article. Functional components of useful articles, no matter how artistically designed, have generally been denied copyright protection unless they are separable from the useful article. In this case, the petitioner's models are not works of applied art, not artistic works. They are utility models, useful articles, albeit with no artistic design or value. No copyright granted by law can be said to arise in favor of the petitioner despite the issuance of the certificates of copyright registration. Okay, trademark, copyright, and patents are different intellectual property rights that cannot be interchanged with one another. A trademark is any visible sign capable of distinguishing the goods or services of an enterprise and shall include a stamped or marked container of goods. A trade name means the name or designation identifying or distinguishing an enterprise. A copyright is confined to literary and artistic works, which are original intellectual creations in the literary and artistic domain, protected from the moment of their creation. Patentable inventions, on the other hand, refer to any technical solution of a problem in any field of human activity, which is new, involves an inventive step, and is industrially applicable. In this case, the bushing and cushion are not works of art. Okay, they are utility models which may be the subject of a patent. So he availed of the wrong protection. Okay, he should have applied for a patent and not a copyright. Okay, we now move to the case of ABS-CBN versus Boston. In this case, the issue is whether a news footage is copyrightable under the law. Okay. So the controversy arose from GMA7's news coverage on the homecoming of Filipino overseas worker and hostage victim Angelo de la Cruz. ABS-CBN conducted live video coverage of the broadcasted the arrival of De La Cruz at the NAIA and the subsequent press conference. Now, GMA7 immediately carried the live news feed in its program Flash Report together with its live broadcast. So ABS-CBN filed a complaint for copyright infringement. Okay. Now, the issue is whether or not the news footage is copyrightable under the law. ABS-CBN is of the position that the news footage is subject to copyright, and it argues that the news footage is not a newsworthy event but merely an outcome of the arrival of Angelo de la Cruz in the Philippines, the latter being the newsworthy event. Respondents, on the other hand, GMA, argue that ABS-CBN's news footage of Angelo de la Cruz arrival is not copyrightable or subject to protection. So the Intellectual Property Code states that works are protected by the sole fact of their creation, irrespective of their mode or form of expression, as well as of their content, quality, and purpose. These include audiovisual works and cinematographic works. News or the event itself is not copyrightable. However, an event can be captured and presented in a specific medium. Television news footage is an expression of the news. Copyright protects the manner of expression of news reports, the particular form or collocation of words in which the writer has communicated. So in this case, the ABS-CBN was sustained by the court. The television news footage is subject to copyrightable protection because it is the means of expression. Okay, the news itself, okay, the happening of the event which constitutes news is not copyrightable, but how the news was expressed is subject to copyright protection. Okay, we now go to the case of FSCAP versus TAN. Okay, Plaintiff is a non-profit association of authors, composers, and publishers. Okay, said association is the owner of certain musical compositions such as Dahil Sa'yo, Sapagkat Ikaw Ay Akin, etc. Now, defendant is the operator of a restaurant known as Alex Soda. Okay, there is in the said restaurant, there is a combo with professional singers hired to play and sing musical compositions to entertain customers. So they were playing and singing the said compositions without any license or permission from the appellant to play or sing the same. So they were sued for copyright infringement. Now, the issue in this case is whether or not the playing and singing of musical compositions which have been copyrighted inside the establishment of the defendant appellee constitute a public performance for profit within the meaning and contemplation of the copyright law. So in this case, it is admitted that the patrons of the restaurant pay only for the food and drinks and apparently not for the music. The music provided is for the purpose of entertaining and amusing the customers in order to make the establishment more attractive and desirable. It will be noted that for the playing and singing of the musical compositions, the combo was paid as independent contractors. It is therefore obvious that the expenses entailed are added to the overhead of the restaurant, which are either eventually charged in the price of food and drinks or to the overall total of additional income produced by the bigger volume of business. Consequently, it is beyond question that the playing and singing of the combo constituted performance for profit, contemplated by the copyright law. An intellectual creation should be copyrighted 30 days after its publication. If made in Manila or 60 days if made elsewhere. Failure to do so renders such creation public property. Indeed, if the general public has made use of the object sought to be copyrighted for 30 days prior to copyright application, the law deems the object to have been donated to the public domain and the same can no longer be copyrighted. So the song Dahil Sa'yo, which was registered on April 20, 1956, became popular in radios, jukeboxes long before registration, while the song Nearness of You, registered on January 14, 1955, had become popular 25 years prior to 1960. And the songs Sapagkat Ikaw ay Akin and Sapagkat Kami ay Tao Lamang, both registered on July 10, 1966, appear to have been known and sung by the witnesses as early as 1965. Under the circumstances, it is clear that the musical compositions in question had long become public property. So there is a period from publication by which you should seek copyright protection. If you continue to publish your work, okay, without seeking protection, okay, for the required number of days, okay, then it is automatic that the same will become public property, no longer entitled to protection. Okay, meaning you will have no right to exclusively publish it because you have in fact donated it to the public domain. Okay, we now go to the case of Zuniga versus Natra Farm. I think this is the last case for this lecture. So in this case, petitioner Zuniga was engaged in the importation, marketing, and sale of various kinds of medicines. Among the products it was selling is a drug called carbamazepine under the brand name Xenaps. Now, Natra Farm is also a domestic corporation in the business of manufacturing, marketing, and distribution of pharmaceutical products. Now, one of the products which was sold by Natra Farm is Citicoline under the trademark Xenaps with an E. So Natra Farm filed with the RTC a complaint against Zuniga for injunction to prevent it from marketing Xenaps with an E because it is confusingly similar to their product Xenaps without an E. So Zuniga claimed that it has been selling Xenaps without an E since 2004 after securing a certificate of product registration in 2003 from the BPAD. As the prior user, Zuniga argued that it is the owner of Xenaps. So under the IP code, ownership of a mark is acquired through registration. Prior use no longer determines the acquisition of ownership of the mark. To clarify, while subsequent use of the mark and proof thereof are required to prevent the removal or cancellation of a registered mark, they should not be taken to mean that actual use and proof thereof are necessary before one can own the mark or exercise the rights of a trademark owner. Zuniga further argues that Natra Farm had registered the mark fraudulently and in bad faith. So bad faith means that the applicant or registrant has knowledge of prior creation, use, and or registration by another of an identical mark. In other words, it is copying and using somebody else's trademark. However, Zuniga failed to show that the registration was made fraudulently or in bad faith. Okay, so it is Zuniga who was the first user. Okay, but Natra Farm was the first registrant of the mark. So, a prior user in good faith may continue to use its mark even after the registration of the mark by the first to file registrant in good faith, subject to the condition that any transfer or assignment of the mark by the prior user in good faith should be made together with the enterprise or business or with that part of his enterprise or business in which the mark is used. The mark cannot be transferred independently of the enterprise and business using it. So because Zunica is not liable for trademark infringement, the court finds that there is no basis for the imposition of penalties. So even if um, Natra Farm has the right to use the ZNAPs with an E, okay, because it was first to register in good faith the said trademark. Okay, Sunica cannot be penalized because it was the prior user of the mark. He cannot be held liable for trademark infringement. So that's all for today. Thank you for listening.